My name is Mike Lyons. I'm the chair of the Communication and Media Studies Department. Welcome to the Communication Studies Department Career Day. This is a collaboration between our department and the Career Center. And so throughout the day, we've invited alumni to join us for conversations about their careers in order to give insight into different career paths and industries and to get advice on how to enter and thrive in these fields. So our guest today is Alim Young. Welcome, Alim.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah.
Alim is a 2019 graduate from SJU with a major in communication studies. He works for the Heights, Philadelphia, and I'm really excited to hear about his work there. He's a director of individual giving. Before that, Alim worked at Thomas Jefferson University Hospitals as the assistant director of development and worked at SJU as a full-time contact tracer at the beginning of the pandemic. Alim has had a couple of internships while he was here. And I'll have him talk about those as well. So I'm really excited to welcome Alim back to Hawk Hill. I have a list of questions that I'll be asking, and then there'll be a Q&A with everybody. If you have any specific questions along the way, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll keep an eye on the chat and address those questions either along the way or at the end when we do a Q&A. All right, so let's get started. I have some questions focused on career stuff here at Alim. In the beginning, could you just describe your current role, your core responsibilities, what a typical day looks like for you? You mentioned that you just came from a big donor meeting. What's a typical day and a typical week look like for you?
Oh, great. Well, first of all, thanks everyone. Thanks Mike for moderating. Thanks Scott for reaching out, Aaron for the IT support. I see Bill Wolf's name, so I'm excited about that too. Hi, Bill. And hi to everyone. If you can, hey Bill, it's not a requirement, but I would love to see some of the wonderful faces of the Hawks today. If you can, if not, that's fine too. And then it's good to see Rachel too. Rachel was one of my professors when I was here. And so it's good to see her. She was left on maternity leave, I think the middle or end of the semester. And so it's good to see her and know she has a 5-year-old. So now I really feel old. But a little bit about my day-to-day. So director of individual giving at Heights. Every day is different, really, because it's wild the amount of individuals that I deal with, from the dollar donor to the $1 million donor or multi-million-dollar donor. And really what my job consists of is figuring out thoughtful ways to engage folks around our mission and the work that we're doing. So essentially our work is to ensure that we create pathways for educational opportunities and workforce success for Black and Brown first generation to college students, with a specific emphasis on low-income communities. And so, individuals who may not fit into the Black and Brown bucket or first generation of college, we're really looking to service a certain type of community of individuals, and that's low-income communities where we're changing the landscape of Philadelphia. And so a lot of that is engaging with donors who have been longtime supporters of Philadelphia Futures and Stepping Stone Scholar, which are the parents of this newly merged organization, Heights Philadelphia. And so a lot of my work stems around cultivating those donors, engaging new ones, and figuring out thoughtful ways to create a sustainable model of fundraising.
So what's a typical day look like for you then, Alim?
So a typical day would have been planned, if I did my job correctly. It would have been planned out at least 3 weeks in advance. And so it's not sales. I want to tell people that, because that was my impression of fundraising and of philanthropy and raising money in general. When I sat in this very room here, this beautiful sunlit room on Hawk Hill in Bronstein, someone had shared with me, like, you'd be really good at fundraising. And I was like, I can't ask people for money all day. And I was like, yeah, that's dead. And they were like, but you're not asking people for money all day. That's the difference. You're creating opportunity to bring individuals who have a philanthropic interest, whether it's in your organization or in your mission or just generally the area in which your organization is affixed, Philadelphia in this case. You're creating meaningful opportunities and you're presenting it to those individuals. And you're just seeing if it aligns. And sometimes there's an alignment and sometimes there's not. And so 3 weeks ago, I was planning this day and I was thinking, who are the right donors for me to be engaging with? Oh my goodness, Dr. Lockridge. Whew, you guys are laying it on heavy. But I was really thinking about where would I be in the city. This is how I have to map out my day. If I'll be in media for one meeting, whether it's a super important meeting with a high level donor, who are 3 or 4 other donors that I can connect with in that area? If nothing else, then to grab coffee with them, to share an update, to check in on them. Hey, I'm in your area. Just wanted to, wanted you to know I thought about you, because this idea of fundraising it sounds very transactional, but the further you move up the fundraising ladder, going into development, going into advancement, it's about this idea of progression towards achieving a goal. And so you're developing relationships, you're advancing a mission of a work. And so it is a continuum, if you will, fundraising being at the very sort of far left or far right, however you want to position it. And it's the start, if you will. But as you continue to grow out your, organization and think about how are you taking relationships that you develop as an organization and you're moving those folks to the next level. So day to day, it's a lot of personalized touches with individuals.
Sorry, guys, I'm hesitated here. Hopefully I'm still on.
You're on.
All right,
You're on.
good. Sorry. So that's interesting. So building relationships is the key, which is a key, in so many different professions and careers. So you started pretty recently at the Heights, right? So tell us about how you transitioned into that and why you had a different career kind of trajectory going. Why'd you switch? What was that earlier career trajectory?
So I started out, um, I started out in the real start. I started out in communications, and I was like, this is going to be my full-time gig. And, I'm going to start a business, which I did. So I also run a full-time business, where I do strategic advertising for, a number of different sole proprietors, nonprofits, and we have a big project on deck now that I'm panicking about in my brain. But I deal with that. And I was like, this is going to be my full-time gig. And I was like, I don't have the bandwidth to do this every day from 9 to 5 and, stay excited about it. I was like, I need to do something else so that this can continue to be my passion. And I was like, well, what else do I want to do? So I was working as a customer service rep, fresh out of college. I got married and was like, what the heck? I need a job. I got a family. And so pandemic hit, we were all laid off, didn't have a job. Thankfully, that pandemic check came in clutch. And so I was, well provided for about 6 to 9 months. And then we had a baby. Whew. Oh my goodness, September of 2020, no job, new baby, unemployment running out. And I was like, what am I going to do? And then I was tapped by quite a few people, Carrie Anderson at the time. I think Trish might have even reached out to me, Kim Allen Stuck, Michelle Smith Lewis, all these different folks like reached out to me, was like, contact tracer, it's open. And I was like, okay. So I applied for this contact tracer job. And as we're taught at St. Joe's to be, discerners, to be individuals that really think, pragmatically about what's next, I started this trail of informational interviews. And I was like, what do I want to do? I was in student affairs. I was a NUF fellow, which was the NASPA undergraduate fellowship program. And it was really focused on student affairs, engagement, and professionals. And I was like, I want to do student affairs. And I was like, I love this work. It's amazing. And I was like, this is going to be burning me out because I care a lot. And truly, you do see the burnout rate being really high. And so I started going through and interviewing individuals at St. Joe's. And I started here and I was like, I want to talk to someone in academic affairs. I want to talk to someone in res life. I want to talk to someone in enrollment management, admissions. And I want to figure out what is really my calling, what is my passion. And I did about 140 informational interviews that started at St. Joe's. And at the end of every conversation, I asked folks, would you be willing to connect me with someone at a local university, within an hour or two of here that I could work for because I would drive there? Or could you connect me with someone who, you just think that I should just definitely be connected with? And it went from, meeting with local Philadelphia-based organizations to I was meeting with folks at like, Georgian Court, college. I was meeting with folks at Loyola, Maryland, all virtually at that time. I had a few interviews with people at like Dell State, Loyola Chicago, some universities on the West Coast. And it was really all about discerning what was my next step. And I interviewed at Thomas Jefferson for an advancement job. And again, my ask was not for a job. I told people, I said, I'm not actively looking for a job while I need one. My call really is to figure out what is next for me. And at the end of that, I ended up working in Grateful Patient fundraising. And it was great. I did it for 2.5, almost 3 years. And I learned a lot because I worked for someone who was challenging in her own upright. She didn't have a family, work was her life, and that wasn't my balance. I had I had one kid at the time, another on the way, full time in, work, full time in ministry, full time in my own like personal side hustle, and I was like, I can't do this. I can't operate the way you want me to. And I made the transition when another hawk, Asia Wittenberger, shout out to Asia, who works at Heights, and she reached out to me after we sat on a panel similar to this in April of 2023, and she said, "Alim, you should come work for Heights. It's amazing." And I had never heard of Heights, but I had, and I didn't realize it. So Heights used to be Philadelphia Futures, and I was a Futures student. And when Asia was like, "Yeah," I was like, "I heard you were part of this," and I was like, "Wow, this is full circle here." And I came back into the fold, and it was just breathtaking, to see where the mission had gone, and to see, while I didn't finish the program myself, that I was impacted by, the different professionals that, I'm still in contact with today that cared about my future, that cared about, investing in Philadelphia's youth. So to get here to where I am, it was a journey. It was not, linear. It was not clean. It was nasty. It was hard. It was tiring. It was exhausting some days, but the reality is that I wanted to be where, for me, I'm a faith-led person. So I wanted to be where God wanted me to be. And so a lot of that was just flowing with it.
That's really interesting. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff there to unpack. I love the idea, first of all, that and students stress out about this so much that, it's not where you start, it's kind of where you finish, right? And we all start somewhere where we don't want to stay typically, right? But I got to ask you about this, man, because I think this would be confusing to a lot of students. Not confusing, but puzzling. This idea of the informational interview.
Mm.
So talk a little bit about this. How do you do that?
Sure. So, I mean, and I just had this conversation with someone yesterday who I worked at Jefferson with, and they're like newly graduated, they had a few internships, and they're like, I don't know what to do. Like, I need a job. Like, and they were like, I keep applying to things, and either the positions are filled or, they have another candidate they're already interested in, like, how did you get this? And I was like, well, I approached people from a professional development standpoint, and I wanted to learn. And a lot of times in the world that we live in, people are moving so fast that no one wants to take the time to listen and to learn from seasoned professionals. And that especially in student affairs, but in any field, communications. I met with a few people who used to work here at St. Joe's, and then a few folks who left here and went some other places. And they were so willing because one of the hawk, they were like, okay, like you're a hawk. Come on, let's go, let's talk. But then this just genuine nature to want to give back. And I don't care how high up you get on the ladder of success. I don't care how much you've achieved in your life. I don't care how much life has beaten you down. You want someone to feel cared about. If life beat you down, you want them to feel cared about because you were beat down and someone didn't care about you who should have. If you're doing really well and life has treated you great, you want, to give back because you want people to have the same opportunities you had, and you realize someone opened a door for me. And so I reached out to people in that vein. I was like, I just want to learn from you and I want to glean from your experience. And for some, it meant 15 minutes because they were the VP at some, super established organization, and I respected their time. And for others, they were like, come sit down and have lunch in my office. And it went from what was supposed to be an hour. And I watched several people pick up their phones and say, cancel the rest of my meetings for the day. I need to have this conversation. And it really was me taking the time to learn and to listen and to know that I'm not on, Mike Lyons' path. I'm not on, Aisha Lockridge's path, Rachel Sullivan, Scott Rappaport, Aaron Obetz. I'm on Alim's path, and I have to be comfortable with it being, disoriented and messy. And it was hearing from other professionals who had quote unquote made it, to know that it's okay where I am. That's completely fine.
That's amazing. There's a question on here. What are ways that your organization and our industry demonstrate a commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion? And so I would put a little bit of a twist on that. If it's fair, can you compare your two experiences? So your previous job and your current job, right? How do they compare as far as diversity, inclusion, equity, that kind of thing?
Sure. So Jefferson had a specific aim to advance healthcare equity, which is something that's deeply important to me as well. This idea that some of the poorest zip codes and health disparities are right here in Philadelphia, especially in North Philadelphia, where my family comes from. And so this idea that there was a commitment to diversity there, and I understood that, and I understand the big picture, societal pictures that in order to elevate healthcare for all, sometimes we need to focus on elevating the experience for the individuals that can turn the dime to elevate the experience for all. But it wasn't something that was like calling me. It just wasn't enough for me. And I was gonna say damn good job. I did a really good job, and I was excited. People who I connected with are still good friends of mine, from Jefferson, both donors and colleagues. These folks like still call me, like wish me happy birthday, or like call me, check on my kids, check on me, but the shift for me was thinking about an organization that is plugged into the community that I care about. And I mean deeply plugged in. Heights is embedded in 19 high schools in the school district, 4 middle schools, and growing. They're doing programmatic work where they're partnering with other city officials, other nonprofits to advance educational equity, and not just to advance it for the sake of advancing it. We have metrics that say we want our students to graduate college with minimal debt, debt. And what does that mean, minimal debt? Because everything is vague these days. It means not having more than $27,000 total debt, and they've called out specific numbers. What does that mean, for, corporate partnerships or university partnerships? It means having memorandums of understanding where you're charging these large institutions that have benefited for years, from systematic oppression and from, just being quite honest, this idea that, the majority, being white, affluent males, like have had the opportunity to advance some of these universities in a way that HBCUs, historical Black colleges and universities, had not, and are currently struggling because, and it's putting some of those, corporations who have dug down Philadelphia roots and say, we're staying here forever, like Comcast, and saying to them, now you have to you have to invest in Philadelphia's youth, because if you want to lift this community, it means lifting the youth, and it means creating opportunities for them, which Comcast did. They, committed to us $1 million through their Project Up grant, supporting us, and they're giving access to opportunities through internships and through full-time job, pipelines. Like we have the captive audience, and those are our students, but we're not going to allow any of these institutions to pillage or to take advantage of the captive audience we have. You have to put your philanthropic dollars, you have to put your corporate, social responsibility, you have to put your human resource, opportunity. You have to put those things where you say you're going to invest them in our students and do something.
Ooh, my heart's racing, man. That was amazing. So let me ask you this. So a lot of students here. Let's turn it back to that student experience. What are a couple of things that you wish somebody would have told you when you were in school?
One of the things that Heights is doing, that I think other organizations, not that they don't do well, but they're educating our students that there are paid internship opportunities that align with your interests. And I think that a lot of our students either don't go for the internship that aligns with their interests because it's not paid, and they can't advocate for themselves because they're not the ones who have to have the, fiscally responsible conversation about what that means. They're not the ones who are behind the budget conversations. But we're really pushing for, these internships that, whether it's, the arts or the sciences that may not have, opportunities that can be paid for by universities or by these big businesses that should be, really pushing to get an internship that lines up with your interests, and advocating for why it should be paid for, and leveraging, your own research and saying like, well, this organization, I'm not interested in working for them, but they're offering paid internships. Could you explain to me why you're not, offering a paid internship? And don't be scared because it's a big name, you know oh my goodness, like I don't want to offend St. Joe's, because they're not offering paid internships, so I'm not going to ask the question of why. Dr. Aisha Lockridge taught me this very well, and she said whenever someone says something that gives you pause, and whether it's charged, with a microaggression or anything like that, just ask why and just sit back and let them explain, because if they can't explain it, then they need to go back to their drawing boards and just keep asking, but why? Oh, we just couldn't do it. It wasn't in the budget this year. But why? I thought your investment, your mission said that you were invested in a diverse candidate pool, for your workforce. So why haven't you invested, that this internship be paid for, knowing that, 30% of your organization's interns are African American males? But why? When your candidate pool is being largely pulled from, the poorest zip codes in this country, and ask those challenging questions, because then you not only become an advocate for yourself, you become an advocate for those around you.
And the people that follow you too. I mean, it's such a great point. We have this relationship. St. Joe's has this relationship with the Eagles now, right? The official higher education partner or whatever. And so I was in a meeting where we were vetting internship applications with somebody from the Eagles, and somebody asked the question, "Are these paid?" Like, no, they're not paid. And everybody was just like, well, why not? You're like one of the wealthiest organizations in the city. And the guy said, well, that's just the way it's always been. And that is exactly the wrong answer. Right. So to your point, yeah, that's excellent, man. Thank you. Listen, I have to ask because what may be scarier than getting a job is starting your own business. But I think that's something that people are really interested in. I've talked to students about that. They just don't know where to start. And so you've taken this on as a side hustle. So explain a little bit how that works.
My gosh. It it means working your 9 to 5 by day and building your practice by night. If it's something that you're truly passionate about, and I'm not saying that you have to do both. I know some people that have, as Professor Vanessa Krause would say, sin bravely, and who just took a leap of faith and had the financial support or backing of someone for some period of time and said, and I am going to do this thing, you know but what it really means, it's being dedicated in your own mind and saying, I am going to do this, setting realistic mile markers and saying, by April of 2024, I'm going to be at this point in this process of establishing, my business. And it's reevaluating as you approach that time period. If you get to April, here we are in April, and you said by the end of April, you're going to have, confirmation of an LLC or an S chapter corporation for your business. And, you're going to have the meat and potato, or the bones, I should say. You're going to have the bones and infrastructure in place by April 30th. And we're at April 10th. And you haven't even put in an application with the Commonwealth to secure an LLC, or, you haven't set up a tax account with the city. Maybe you should reevaluate where you are and then set new timeline. Don't allow the time to just go past and say, okay, I'll get to it when I get to it. When we started, it was in 2018. I was still a student here. And I had been doing this for St. Joe's for a number of departments. I started out as a career ambassador for the Career Development Center, working with Trish Schaefer. Shout out to Trish because she's amazing. Trish, her daughter and I went to high school together, and she actually plugged me in for, a student worker job when, before I even started at St. Joe's. And so like this conversation about, you know, the conversation about like the business started with me and just a friend of mine. And we were like, what are we gonna do? Like, we should do something. We're like, yeah, let's do a business. And then all of a sudden, like we were like full motion. Like we were, okay, what does that mean? It's like, all right, we need an LLC to start because we need to protect our assets. And it's like, great. It's like we can't handle this. We're really busy. So how can we take, the brand that we've established, our company logo, we we are very mindful that we didn't want to be sued and like our own personal assets be found liable in this process. So we like completely separated this organization like as its own entity, own EIN number, all of that crap. And we were like, and now we also need liability coverage. And what we can then do is other freelancers, whether photographers or videographers or design artists, who are interested in like, doing these things and who are like, I don't know if I can do this on my own. We bring them in as subcontractors. We give them protection under our liability. We let them use our brand, and then they give us a remittance of whatever they make off of the job. Because we have the clientele and we have the access to the capital, human capital to say like, oh, like you should like take on this project. And we're like, we don't have the bandwidth. We're working two jobs and we're volunteering. So what I do is then I call up, Will Marsh, who works here. And I'm like, hey, Will, like I have this website thing that, someone needs some help on. Can you do a quick consultation? We'll do the consultation. He'll remit back to us a percentage and then he keeps the rest. And it's all under the brand of I Am. So
That's it. That's great. So when I think back on your time at St. Joe's, you are somebody who kind of squeezed out as much from their college experience as humanly possible. And so one of the questions on here are what are 2 to 3 experiences students should engage in while in college to help prepare them for entering a field after graduation?
So entering the field of life and adulting, and I mean real life adulting, like you should go to, I would highly recommend any of like the campus ministry retreats. And that is a very shameless plug because I think that when I was at like some of my lowest points in life and like just figuring out like not just what I was going to do as like a professional, but what I was doing with my life as a person and, you know, it isn't about a faith that you say like, oh, like I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Jew. It doesn't matter. It's just having a support system, faith-based support system, or just having a listening ear that will then say to you like, let's have a chat about what you're like, what is your calling, what do you feel that's at your core. Go on one of those retreats. I went on like a silent retreat. I went on what's a couple other ones? I used to go on like the Center for Inclusion and Diversity retreats. I was an ambassador for the organization. And it really was all about like stepping away and really reflecting on what you wanted out of life. And maybe you don't know, and that's okay too. But like it's admitting, I don't know what I want. And like looking for the resources that are exist on this campus and like asking for help and guidance because it's those conversations with, professionals that will then help you to say like, okay, clearly you should not be an accountant because you do not like math. Like you shouldn't be anyone's tax advisor, like because you are failing at all of your accounting classes and like that's not a good choice for you. Let's reevaluate here. Um, the other thing would be do things that you love with people that you love. Like the experiences that I had were largely tied to just wanting to be around people who I felt were genuinely a part of my community. And so I wasn't always like, with all the cool and popular kids and, running off to a party. I did that too. But, I spent time with people who I cared about and people who were, socially awkward and different from the rest. And, I figured if I can find community here with folks that like look vastly different than me and who have vast different interests, like I can find community anywhere. And it was really, tapping into that, like, and just doing what I love to do. Like I wanted to be a poli sci major because I was like, in order for me to like, have the knowledge that I need to be, because I wanted to be a lawyer, the knowledge that I need to like know as like a lawyer and like, to be willing to read all these like nasty, long, horrible like texts. Like I need to like have this bandwidth. And I quickly realized this is not for me. Like I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't want to read, Locke and Hobbes and like it's important. I understand the reference of those things, but like I also don't want to like spend my life doing that. And I was like, I want to do something. It was weird, guys. I want to explain this, Mike, real quick. I was in a class the year that, Trump and Clinton were running, and it was a hybrid class taught by Becky Scola and Dave Perry. And it was that class where I realized I don't want to be a poli sci major. I want to be a comm major. I want to create things. I want to do things that like bring life and joy into the world. Not saying poli sci doesn't do that, but just this was my, epiphany. And I had to walk up to both of them after class one day and was like, "Can you sign this like transfer to a different major?" And it's like, "Okay, like what's this about?" And then another person was like, "Can you sign this also?" And I was like, "Oh crap!" Like, and then they sat down, they had a talk with me both separately and together, and really just figured out like why, like what inspired this change. And it was I wanted to do something that was meaningful to me, and it didn't mean you know texts from you know, de Tocqueville and things like that. It meant creating beauty in a world where like there's chaos and destruction. I'm done, Mike.
It's a great point to think about. I talk to students a lot about, when they ask, when we enter this conversation, what I want to be, the first question always is, what do you want to do? Because you can do things, you can be lots of different things, but it's what you want to do that will sustain you for the rest of your life, right? Um, Quick note from Trish, from the Career Center, that Com 290, which is a class we typically offer in the fall, goes into informational interviewing. So she just noted that in the chat, and I wanted to pass that along to students. We're going to do a Q&A real quick, but the obligatory, what communication classes really do you think prepared you for what you're doing now, or just classes in general, com or not com?
I always looked at myself as like being globally minded, but I didn't realize like that I really wasn't, and that I really didn't like take in the experience that was, others other than the US, and this plush life, as hard as it can be sometimes. Then I realized until I took, I think it was, I can't remember whether it was an English course. I think it might have been English. I did a study tour in South Africa with Dr. Beirut and Dr. Spinner. And when I say like it was life changing to go to, as a Black man, to go to South Africa and be around, some of the most disparaging parts of the country, financially, economically, all these different things. Like, and to be like Black and like have all this privilege, it was different because I'm usually like the disadvantaged one. I'm the one that's like, like, oh, because people's thinking like I'm in a room full of white people, and it's like, look at the Black guy. It's like, but in a room full of, whether it was wealth, surrounded by, being surrounded by wealth or being surrounded by poverty, just having so much privilege. It was a different weight. And I both empathize with my white counterparts, but then I also take and I say, this is an opportunity to actionalize your privilege, and like to move and to do something. You cannot sit in the pity, and you cannot, just be okay with that. Like, Mike, you are an absolute great example of like how this is done. Like, you take your privilege and you take your experience in life, and you show how, everyone's experience is not the same, but it's also about how you take your experiences in life and you use them to better your community, to better the people around you. um so yeah, do a study tour. I don't care where you go. Like, do a study tour. Go experience the rest of the world and understand like the immense amount of privilege that you bring, indifferent of skin color, but just as like, from this, first world that we live in, and like being like this leader in the globe. Like, understand the rest of the world's struggle and how you can do something here, starting in your backyard, to change the world.
I think that just perfectly encapsulates what this university is supposed to be,
Oh no, Mike.
that we talk. Yeah, thanks for that.
I lost the last part of your comment. You froze on me.
Yeah, sorry guys, I'm at the University City campus, and the internet keeps breaking up. But the you know, that perfectly encapsulates the mission of the university, what we talk about at this university all the time, right? Um, I want to throw it open. We have to end at 12:05, at 15 minutes for a Q&A. So anybody wants to jump in at the chat, anybody wants to jump in and ask a question, just put your hand up, I guess, and and we'll put you on with Alim.
Nothing is off the table. Like you can ask me, like, why the heck did you get married straight out of high school? Like, I mean, straight out of college. Like, what was that about? Mike was at my wedding. Like, I absolutely love my wife. We grew up together. You can ask me about my business. You can ask me like why I had children so soon. Anything. Nothing is taboo.
All right, it's a shy group.
It's okay.
Let me throw one of these out. Um, you've answered already a lot of the questions that are on the list here. What types of internships, and this is a really specific question, what types of internships do you think students try to secure other than paid to get into this job market that they're faced with?
That they should or that they
Yeah, are there certain ones they should? I mean, internships are great because they can also teach you what you don't want to do, right? And that's important too, as you have mentioned. Any kind of internship strategy you might pass on to students?
um I mean, this is a practice run of what you're going to have to do for the rest of your life, the next 40 years of your life. Like you're going to have to like vet folks and you're going to have to like I I say there's no particular internship. I will say that you should be looking for particular people and for particular missions that align with your values. And you should not compromise your value system for a job or for a dollar because it ultimately will lead to like burnout and, you won't recognize the semblance of you that exists beyond that point, because then once you compromise, choosing a career path that goes contrary to your value system or to your why, this idea of like the St. Joe's, like what's at your center, like once you start that compromise, you'll just continue to do it in life. And like, so I don't recommend that you do anything that goes against that value system. I say go for whatever internships that like you think you might be interested in. I worked as a claims intern for an insurance company, a liability insurance company for 2 years while I was at St. Joe's, namely because it was paid, but also because I was just like, it was an opportunity that was thrown my way. Someone said like, you should like try this. And I was really good at it. But I quickly realized I do not want to be in liability insurance. But you guys pay really well. So I'm gonna do this, but I'm out. Um, and then like other internships, again, I do not advocate for unpaid internships, but like if something is unpaid and you're like, I feel really passionate about this, do it. That's okay too. Like, because trust me, some of these jobs in comparisons to other will feel unpaid. Like, yeah, Philadelphia is an expensive city, and what they consider a living wage is not a living wage. And so, you know, you're gonna face some of that, like especially early on in your career. I'm very fortunate that I scaled very quickly, and I started doing relatively well for myself like very early on in my career. But like it's not the same for everyone. You may have to work a dead end job that you hate for a second, but like don't be complacent in that. Don't stay in that place. Sin bravely.
Great. Thanks, Aline. We got about 10 minutes left, guys. If anybody wants to jump in, either throw a question in the chat or feel free to just chime in. Take a second there to check. So Bill has a question. Go for it, Bill.
Hey, Alim, it's great to see you and to hear how successful you've been and just get that taste of your enthusiasm once again after all these years. It's not surprising how successful you've been, but it's great to see. And congratulations on your family. And I imagine there's an Alim Jr. And it sounds like there's another one at least on the way if that one hasn't been born. So congratulations on all that.
She's here, Bill, and she's taking the world by storm. Her name is Dorcas, and she is
That's great.
father's boss.
That's wonderful. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about if all of these really fascinating approaches to interviewing and the informational interviewing and your relationship with everybody is that stepping out of your comfort zone at all? And if not, if that's sort of, you're very dynamic and you've always been, at least from what I remember, really interested in building relationships and you bring people together. That's basically who you are. I've always felt that way. But for those of us who might be more introverted and who might really struggle with stepping out and even just sending that initial email or making that phone call, I wonder if you've worked with people like that, or you could talk about,
Yeah.
I don't know, experiences or approaches that those individuals might take to building relationships in ways that are really stepping out of the comfort zone.
Yeah. I talk a big game, Bill. Like I just feel like I could be like the life of the party, but like deep down on the inside, I am truly like a wallflower. Like it is so weird. Go ahead, Dr. Lockridge, you can make that face if you want, but like I really like I hate networking. I hate working with folks. Like I hate group projects. Like it does something to me. Like and I am definitely stepping out of my comfort zone. But again, and I got some of this language from different professors here at St. Joe, like send bravely. Like, do you know how many times I write and rewrite emails before I send them? And then I have this feature on Google where like it sends and there's like a 30-second window before it actually sends. And I click undo like 10 times before I send it because I'm like, is this the right tone? Like, will this person perceive me well? Will I be perceived as like a jackass? Like, like different things like that. Like, and I think about these things a lot. And I'm a person that's in my head, but like you just have to do it. You have to send that email and then you have to prove to yourself that you can do it. And then the others, like, the people who will be the receivers of those emails, they will then help to build that confidence in you. You don't have to be someone dancing on a stage to attract someone's attention. Sometimes it's the person that's quiet in the classroom that when the teacher calls on them and says like, what is your thought? And they give that one insightful piece that changes someone's life or that changes the professor's life, so don't discredit what you bring to the table just because you don't speak all the time or because you don't have a comment about every political issue or every societal issue or just everything in general. Like sometimes it's the one thing that you say that will change someone's life, and that's okay. So just do it. Wouldn't I can say just do it?
Thank you for that. Although I tend to agree with Aisha's like
Y'all don't realize like I'm like cringing every time like I'm on screens like this. Like I'm all clammy right now. Like I'm like I'm like
well, you
it's
fake it well.
like I get off of these things and I'm like, could I have said something differently? Like I shouldn't have said that. But yeah.
So Alim, there's a question somebody sent directly to me in the chat, and it is from two students, and it's more of a life question. Society tells us when we should have children, when we should get married, and certainly it's not directly after college, typically, we're told. So two students ask, how did getting married young affect your career path and also your social life?
Hmm. Uh, so I partied hardy in school. I can tell you that right now. I partied hard. Yeah, I had a good time. I grew up with my wife. Like we were best friends, just we hated each other, we loved each other, like we couldn't stand each other, we helped each other, we saw each other through some of our darkest like moments. And we're like literally coming off of our honeymoon, we realized that we lost like one of the most influential people in both of our lives coming off of our honeymoon. Someone broke the news to us in a car. And so, I mean, I don't care what society thinks, like when it comes to like get married when you feel like it. Like if you don't want to get married, don't get married. If you don't want to have children, don't have children. Like you really have to like care less about what people think. I got married because I found someone who I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. And we have not had it easy. Like it's been hard. These last 5 years have been challenging. But at the end of the day, I knew that this was my forever partner. And to those that get, divorced, that's okay too, because sometimes maybe it's the first, second, or third time, that you find that forever person. And then some people are just meant for seasons. So don't make a knee-jerk reaction either, just because like you in love with somebody. Yeah, I was in love with my best friend, but what do they say? If you can fall into love, you can fall out of love, marry for the right reasons. This is someone who I wanted to build an empire with. This is someone who I saw being the mother of my children. This is someone who I saw as strength to me because, I'm not everything, and she is my everything. She makes the difference. She's the complementary piece of Alim that I was missing. Oh, and then with children, like, again, have children when you feel like it. Don't have children if you don't want to. That's okay too. Like, they are pains in the butts. Like, seriously, parents may not admit it like right away, but I tell my kids now, ooh, I was like, it's this thing in my backside and it's called you. Like, and they are tough. They ask the tough questions of you and all that other crap. So yeah.
Yeah. I wish I would have known somebody like you when I was in college, man. I could have used some of that advice. We got a couple minutes left, everybody. So who has a question?
I think
You
Dr.
can jump in with
I'm not sure if you called on me, but
Alim is
my hand raise isn't working, my little emoji, so I'm raising my hand here.
go for it.
Alim, amazing to see you, always. I know that you are someone who is in a constant state of discernment, and you already mentioned that. So it's not like you do it and then you're done. It's a constant cycle. So as you think about where you are, and children are the X factor, of course, and all that, but what are you discerning on right now, and where do you think you might go next?
Uh, I'm figuring out what I need to know to get to the next stage in my career. I went from being a qualifier of major gift potential in 2021 to being the lead over a program, not of all the fundraising, but a lead over like the individual given portion of our program, and that's with 2.5 years of experience. And it's because I taught myself to be a sponge, and good, bad, or indifferent, horrible boss, great boss, sad boss, mad boss. I soak up everything I can from them. I soak up how to be a great boss. I soak up how to not be a great boss. I soak up, how to care for people that have life circumstances where you just need to be flexible. And so I'm thinking about my leadership capacity right now and what I want to give to someone who was in my position and the support I want to, surround them with, thinking that people are dynamic and like everyone isn't meant to be at a company for 5 years before they get promoted. Like some people, like you should just send off into the world and say like you shouldn't be here, like, and you can use this time to both do your job and find your next position, and I will support you in whatever way possible. And like the professionals of today need to start to be that for the professionals of tomorrow, because that doesn't exist. 40 years at a company, where you get a pension, that world doesn't exist anymore. Companies do not care about people the same way, and I'm not saying they ever did, but they do not care about people in the same way that they used to or that they should. And it is time for like professionals to realize I need to help this person and not be so wedded to this place.
Thank you, Alim.
I want Dr. Lockridge to go before we have to sign off.
Yeah, so perhaps you are not, maybe you feel uncomfortable talking, but you have had the gift of gab since I met you, right? You are gregarious, right? People want to talk to you. You want to talk to people. And so even if, I think the point is, even if you're like right now, I'm clammy, it ever shows, right? And you keep working on it so that you're good at it. And so people want to talk to you. So I think that's important. If he's telling us that he's clammy, we're going to believe him. But I'm telling you, he is the smoothest, clammiest person I've ever seen, right? I think the other thing is this. I think I've been selling students on this idea, or trying to desperately, that group work is a thing that you keep doing your entire career, as much as you hate it in undergrad, and that probably you don't practice it as much because students don't like it. Can you tell me what percentage of your job is quote unquote group work? How much of your job requires you to work with other people?
70%, if not more, because my job is so intertangled into like, I can't say I want to send out our appeal on the 22nd of April and then that be okay, because like the communications person has to design it. And, I have to take a step back from my ability to design something and say, that's not my job. And I have to give someone the proper runway to do their job that will then inform my work. When we think about, gift processing. It's like I can't acknowledge that we received a gift until the gift processing team has actually recorded it in our system. And so again, relying heavily on them and not just letting people do their job and being okay with how people do their job. Find yourself being a collaborator. Ask people, what can I do to help streamline the work that you're doing? Like, what can I do to make your job easier? And that isn't in undergrad and in life. Sometimes we take that on as like, I'm doing someone else's work for them. No, you're not. You're helping people to create a better system to support you and those around you. So ask people those questions. Like, what can I do to support you? What can you do to support me? How can we work more collaboratively? Like, let's talk about those things. Carolyn, I'm in a meeting. I'll call you right back.
That's great. Thanks, Alim.
Sorry.
Speaking of
Wow.
collaboration, we are out of time. It has been just so great to see you again, Alim, and your words of wisdom. I had forgotten how wise you are, and we wish you the best for the rest of your career, and hopefully you can come back again and talk to students about practical stuff, but also about life stuff, which I think you have some amazing things to offer to all of us. So thanks everybody for coming. We have hand clap for Alim. We have another session at 12:20. Is that right? And so the Zooms are available for that. Does anybody at the Career Center want to talk about anything real quick? Well, we have a few people on the line here.
Yeah, I'll just plug. We have 3 more sessions coming up: 12:20, 1:50, and then at 5 o'clock tonight. So all students, I know we sent out an email, plus your faculty have talked to you about it. So jump on. Alim, thank you so much today. This should be required viewing for all students, not just COM.
Yes.
For sure. This was great.
Agreed.
Anytime you guys
Yes,
need.
thanks.
Anytime.
Thanks again, Alim. Thanks everybody for stopping by.